comment tout d'un coup on se réveille un matin et on est au fond du trou. Enfin, c'est quand même assez presque surréaliste comme perspective.
Hi everyone, I'm Valérie Bugot. I hold a doctorate in private law from the University of Paris Panthéon-Sorbonne, and I'm a lawyer by training. In 2005, I defended a thesis on business law before practicing as a tax lawyer for several years. However, being completely opposed to the values of the professional environment I was evolving in, I decided in 2009 to leave the bar. Since then, I have been devoting myself to disseminating the results of my research work in law, economics, and political science to the general public. My goal is to decipher the real workings of our global economic system and reveal the universal imposture in which we live. My favorite topics are the study of national and international institutions, money, law, business, and the economy as a whole. I have written several books to spread my analysis, including The Hidden Reasons for World Disorder and Tomorrow Renewal. I also regularly participate in symposiums and shows dealing with these issues. In 2021, I created the Revolu Droit Association with the aim of promoting a profound reform of our political institutions, which I consider necessary to get out of the current deadlock. My ambition is to contribute to the advent of a real participatory democracy. I am driven by a deep sense of the public interest and a desire to positively transform society by rebalancing the power relations at play. My approach aims to be both realistic, based on a clear assessment of the situation, and constructive, by proposing concrete solutions, as we will see during this presentation. Today, I make a worrying assessment of the economic, political, and social situation. The decline of the dollar as an international currency will have dramatic consequences. Our individual freedoms and private property are threatened. We are facing a civilizational impasse where the living has become a commodity. However, I maintain a positive and constructive state of mind. I propose concrete solutions for a paradigm shift towards a fairer society. These solutions encompass the economic, political, legal, and institutional levels. They require a return to the foundations of democracy and the general interest. The dollar is losing its status as an international currency. This will have disastrous repercussions for the United States and countries that use the dollar, such as European countries. We are all affected because we have dollars in our wallets. The United States is the most indebted country in the world. When the dollar loses its status, it will have to become a national currency, again backed by tangible assets. But the balance between the assets and liabilities of the United States is dramatically unbalanced. Assets will therefore have to be found, particularly in European countries, which are de facto financial colonies of the American Empire. This means that our private and public assets will be liquidated. We will see a loss of public services, savings, private property, and personal security. To carry this out, radical social control will be established. How did we get here? It is the result of a 300-year evolution since the French Revolution and the advent of parliamentarism in 1789, associated with the creation of private central banks from 1800 onwards. This representative parliamentary model, combined with independent central banks, has led to a form of plutocracy, regardless of the formal state model. Political parties represent only their own interests and those of their financiers, not the general interest. The central bank serves the interests of those who hold the initial capital. It is the result of a historical evolution where finance has gradually taken precedence over politics from England to France and then to the United States, leading to the loss of sovereignty. In parallel, economic centralization took place, marked by the capture of states' regulatory power by multinationals themselves under the control of the bankers providing credit. In the 20th century, we see an increasing concentration of economic and political power in international institutions. 1930. Central banks coordinate within the Bank for International Settlements. 1944. Bretton Woods, agreements with the IMF and World Bank. 1945. Creation of the UN. 1957. Birth of the European institutions under the influence of the Bilderberg. 1968. Informal creation of the Club of Rome. 1971. Creation of the World Economic Forum in Davos. This results in a loss of sovereignty of nation-states in favor of an internationalized economic and political elite, which controls finance and major geopolitical orientations. This economic centralization has also strengthened the grip of multinationals, with the support of financial institutions, on the regulatory and decision-making mechanisms of states. This elite is pursuing its hegemonic project, but is destabilized by the emergence of new powers such as China. To get out of the current impasse, we must rethink the economic foundations. End the anonymity of capital that generates irresponsibility. Develop worker participation in corporate governance. Return to a conception of the company as an institution, not just an economic agent. Reform the status of money, which must become a public good managed by the state. It is essential to reaffirm the nature of money as a public institution, designed and managed in the interest of all. Money must serve as a lever for a country's economic policy and not be subject to market forces or private interests. End the rampant financialization and refocus the economy on concrete exchanges for the benefit of society. Promote short supply chains, national currencies, and a new endogenous development model for territories. The goal is to rebuild the economy on a healthy basis, in the service of the common good and not the hoarding of wealth by a minority. To remake society, we must give political representation back to all social interests via interest groups, modeled on the corporations of the Ancien Régime. Deconcentrate power through a living local democracy and respect for the principle of subsidiarity. Refocus the state on its essential sovereign functions: justice, police, army, currency, as well as the management of public affairs such as energy, transport, and infrastructure. Make all political mandates binding and automatically dismiss elected officials who do not respect the program on which they were elected. Elect the head of state and ministers by universal suffrage on the proposal of interest groups and on the basis of a record, not promises. The goal is to restore popular sovereignty by reviving direct and participatory democracy. For a more balanced justice system, we must distinguish delegated justice to interest groups for professional issues and retained justice at the state level. Decongest the courts by encouraging mediation and amicable arbitration. Create a state secretariat for appeals in equity to overcome the limitations of strict enforcement of the law. End unbridled legal positivism by reaffirming the great principles of natural law and common civil law that applies to all. Get out of the logic of exceptional rights and the proliferation of codification. The aim is to place justice back at the heart of society in a role of mediation and in the service of the general interest. To restore balance in society, we must end the anonymity of capital so that holders of economic power are accountable for their actions. Reinvest individual responsibility by making citizens active players in their lives rather than passive consumers. Make interest groups accountable by delegating prerogatives to them within a decentralized framework. Restore the power responsibility. Binomial in politics through binding mandates and dismissal of elected officials who do not respect their commitments, encourage citizen engagement at all levels to get out of passivity and rebuild social ties. The goal is to put humans back at the heart of society and to consider them as free and responsible citizens rather than cogs in the service of profit maximization. Despite current challenges, a paradigm shift towards a fairer and more sustainable society is possible if we dare to. Profoundly rethink our economic and political models, regain a sense of the general interest and the common good, rebalance power relations by giving more power to the greatest number, rebuild our institutions on the principles of freedom, responsibility, and solidarity. Put humans and the planet back at the heart of concerns rather than the pursuit of profit at all costs. Regain a taste for citizen engagement and participatory democracy. If drifts may have gradually set in, it is possible to make the transition to a society more respectful of all living beings, provided we have the collective will to do so. The power to transform is in our hands. Despite the challenges, let's remain confident in our collective ability to build a positive future. To do this, let's cultivate optimism and determination to initiate change, solidarity and mutual aid within our communities, daily citizen engagement at our level, creativity to imagine new solutions, a taste for right action rather than passivity, respect for others and our environment, peace and nonviolence in our words and deeds. By joining existing initiatives and developing new models, we can all become actors of a more humane society where it is good to live. The power to transform is in our hands. At the end of this conference, I hope to have convinced you that a profound paradigm shift is necessary and possible. We are going through troubled times, but this can be the breeding ground for a positive transformation of society. Everything will depend on our will and ability to initiate this change. It is time for us to get involved at our level to bring about the better world we aspire to. Join the Révolu Droit movement and participate in the adventure. Together, by the millions, we can become the actors of our destiny again. The power to transform is in our hands. It is up to us to seize it. I'll see you at www.revoludroit.fr to learn more about the project and the practical actions you can take now to get involved on this path. I'm Valerie Bugao. The future is still just a draft. Let's write it together.